How do you become a coaching legend in the NHL? For most, the answer is winning championships. But one man became a legend by forcing the league to constantly rewrite its own rulebook. His name was Roger Nielsen, a coach so clever and observant that he found loopholes no one else could see. He was the man who put a defenseman in goal during penalty shots, who pulled his goalie with only seconds left just to stall for time. They called him Captain Video for his pioneering use of game tape. Was he a brilliant strategist changing the game for the better, or a clever rule bender pushing the limits of sportsmanship? To understand the story of Roger Nielsen, we must travel back to the time he was born. In 1934, during the depths of the Great Depression, Roger was born in Blyth, Ontario, a tiny rural town in Canada. It was a quiet place of vast plains and endless cornfields, far from the center of the world. In Canada at that time, especially in small towns like this, winter had only one meaning. It was the hockey season. Children grew up on worn-out skates, swinging wooden sticks on frozen ponds. Hockey wasn't just a sport. It was life itself, the language of the community, the fiery passion that helped them endure the harsh winters. Young Roger also loved hockey, but he was a little different from the other kids. He was not a natural-born star player. He wasn't an especially fast skater, nor did he have a powerful shot, but he possessed a special talent that others did not: the ability to read the game. While other kids were merely chasing the puck, young Roger was thinking, "Why is that player standing in that position? How can I predict the opponent's moves in advance?" He found more joy in understanding why a goal was scored than in scoring it himself. This analytical nature led him down the path of a strategist, not a player. After majoring in education at McMaster University, he decided to make the hockey rink his greatest classroom. He chose to become a teacher, not a player. His journey truly began in the 1960s, when he became the coach of a junior hockey team called the Peterborough Petes. Junior hockey is the stage where teenage boys nurture their dreams before turning pro. At the time, most coaches led their teams by shouting and pushing their players hard. But Roger was different. He was an educator, not just a coach. He respected his players as individuals and constantly researched ways to bring out their potential. And it was here that he introduced a revolutionary tool that would change the history of hockey. It was video analysis. Today it seems perfectly normal, but in the 1960s and 70s, using video in sports was like something out of a science fiction novel. Roger used his own money to buy a large, cumbersome video recorder. He would record entire games and then stay up all night reviewing the tapes. He analyzed every little habit of his players, the hidden patterns of the opposing team, and movements in the referee's blind spots. He captured it all on film. The next day, he would gather his players in a small room and review the previous night's game with them. For the first time in their lives, the players could objectively see their own performance. "Look," he would say, "if you had moved just 1 second faster here, a completely different opportunity would have opened up." Instead of yelling, he taught by showing. Other coaches ridiculed him. "Hockey is played on the ice, not on a television," they scoffed. They gave him the nickname Captain Video. At first it was meant as an insult, but soon this nickname became a symbol of awe, because Roger's team started to win, and they won by a lot. He won numerous championships in the junior league. He wasn't just teaching skills, he was teaching his players thinking hockey. He nurtured their ability to understand the game, make their own judgments, and creatively solve problems. Many of his students went on to become great players in the NHL, and they all said the same thing: "Roger Nielsen was the best teacher I ever had." Eventually, his reputation reached the world of professional hockey, the NHL. In 1977, he stepped onto the stage of his dreams as the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But the professional world was harsh. Veteran players who had learned hockey through decades of physical battles and old-school general managers didn't trust his academic style. He was still an outsider, and his innovative methods were often treated as eccentric. He moved from team to team: the Buffalo Sabres, the Vancouver Canucks, the Los Angeles Kings. Everywhere he went, he produced clear results, like leading his teams to the playoffs, but strangely, he never reached the very top. Was it because his methods were too unconventional, or was his gentle nature not suited for the cutthroat world of professional sports? People respected him, but at the same time, they talked about his limitations. Then, in 1982, while he was coaching the Vancouver Canucks, a legendary incident occurred that would be remembered forever in hockey history. At the time, Vancouver was considered an underdog, but under Roger's guidance, they worked miracles and made it to the playoffs. Their opponent was the powerhouse Chicago Blackhawks. Throughout the series, the Vancouver players were tormented by the opponent's rough play and the referee's blatantly one-sided calls. The players were furious at the injustice, and the atmosphere on the bench was filled with despair. At that moment, when everyone was losing hope, Roger Nielsen quietly stood up. He picked up a hockey stick. Then he tied a nearby white towel to the end of the stick, like a white flag of surrender. He raised that white flag high in the air, as if shouting to the referees and the entire league, "We surrender. We will no longer play your unfair game." For a moment, the arena fell silent. Then, a few Vancouver players followed their coach's lead and raised their own sticks with towels tied to them. This wasn't surrender. It was the most powerful and peaceful protest imaginable, a silent scream against injustice. The league office fined him and suspended him, claiming his actions violated the spirit of the game. But the fans felt differently. On the day of the next home game, a miraculous scene unfolded. The entire arena, filled with over 16,000 fans, began waving white towels as if on cue. The stadium was a surging sea of white. The fans were responding to their coach's protest with their whole bodies, saying, "We will fight with you." From that day on, the white towel became a symbol of the Vancouver Canucks, representing an indomitable spirit in the face of injustice. Roger Nielsen may have lost the game, but he won everyone's heart. This incident showed that he was not just a strategist, but a true leader who could move people's souls. Roger Nielsen's genius wasn't limited to video analysis or his ability to communicate with players. He was an artist who played with the very rules of hockey. He read the rulebook more diligently than anyone else, but he didn't read it just to follow the rules. He read it to find the loopholes, to use the rules in ways no one had ever imagined. For example, under the rules at the time, pulling the goalie for an extra attacker at the end of a game was extremely risky. If the opposing team shot at the empty net, there was no way to stop it. But Roger found a clause in the rulebook. If a player other than the goalie entered the crease to block a shot, a penalty would be given, but it would not result in an immediate goal. So, he would dress a defenseman in goalie equipment and have him sit on the bench. Then, in the final moments of a game, as an opponent shot towards the empty net, he would send in this fake goalie to block the shot and take the penalty. The league was stunned and eventually had to create a new rule to stop him. There was another time, too. An opposing player was on a breakaway, one-on-one with the goalie. A goal was almost certain. What did Roger do? He sent all the players from his bench onto the ice. Suddenly, the rink was in chaos, and the referee, of course, had to stop the play and call a too many men on the ice penalty. He had traded a certain goal for a 2-minute penalty. This, too, led to a new rule being created because of Roger Nielsen. People started calling these new regulations the Roger Nielsen rules. He wasn't breaking the rules. He understood them so well that he could play with their limits. This side of him showed just how creative and humorous he was. But his true greatness did not lie only in his tactical genius. The reason so many of his players remember him is because of the human warmth he showed them. In the sports world of that era, it was natural for everything to revolve around the star players. But on Roger's team, everyone was treated with equal respect. He treated the team's biggest star and the bench warmer, who barely played exactly the same. He was the kind of coach who would ask about a player's family or personal struggles before asking about their hockey skills. The legendary player Wayne Gretzky later recalled, "Roger didn't care if you were a superstar or not. He was interested in you as a person. Coaches like that are very rare." He was a man of deep faith, but he never forced his beliefs on others. Instead, he demonstrated his values through his actions: honesty, integrity, and love. He taught his players how to be good people before he taught them how to be good hockey players. Roger Nielsen's coaching life was never easy. Despite his brilliant strategies, he never once lifted the ultimate prize in hockey, the Stanley Cup. Some people called him a great loser. Perhaps it was because he valued the process of playing the game the right way more than victory itself. For him, true victory may have been earning the growth and respect of his players, not a trophy. But the final chapter of his life would begin not with a philosophical choice, but with a cold, hard betrayal. The year was 2000. Roger was the head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, a team loaded with talent but notorious for its internal drama. They were a legitimate contender, a team built to win now. But when the team's performance slumped mid-season, the notoriously impatient and old-school general manager, Bobby Clarke, a Flyers legend in his own right, needed a scapegoat. The decision came down swiftly. Roger Nielsen was fired. For a veteran coach who had dedicated over 3 decades of his life to the sport, who had mentored hundreds of young men, it was a harsh and humiliating blow. There was no ceremony, no respectful farewell, just a cold dismissal. Roger quietly packed his bags, the weight of a dream once again deferred settling on his shoulders. But as he left the city of brotherly love, which had shown him none, he could not have known that a far more devastating piece of news was waiting just around the corner. A battle far greater than any hockey game was about to begin. Shortly after leaving the team, Roger went for a routine checkup. He had been feeling persistent fatigue, something he'd chalked up to the immense stress of an NHL season. The news the doctor delivered, however, was anything but routine. It was a brutal, blindsiding check into the boards of life. He was diagnosed with melanoma, a vicious form of skin cancer, and it was already advanced. The cancer had metastasized, spreading to his bones. The prognosis was grim. The fight for his life had begun. For most people, a diagnosis this severe would mean a retreat from the world, a quiet surrender. But Roger Nielsen was not most people. In an act of unwavering commitment that stunned the hockey world, he continued to engage with the sport he loved, joining the Ottawa Senators as an assistant coach. He refused to let cancer write the final chapter of his story. He would write it himself. His final battle would span over 3 years, and it was marked by incredible courage and dignity. Soon, he was diagnosed with a second, unrelated cancer, multiple myeloma, a cancer of the plasma cells. The diseases brought significant compounding challenges. There was the searing bone pain, the crushing fatigue, and a weakened immune system that made every common cold a serious threat. Nielsen underwent intensive and physically taxing treatments, grueling rounds of chemotherapy, and possibly stem cell therapy, the standard arsenal for managing the disease at the time. These treatments often left him exhausted and vulnerable, a shadow of the energetic man who once prowled behind the bench. Yet, through it all, he maintained his role with the Senators. He attended practices and games whenever his health permitted. His presence in the locker room became a source of quiet inspiration. There, amidst the smell of sweat and tape, he would offer strategic insights, break down video, and mentor young players, his mind as sharp as ever, even as his body failed him. Colleagues noted his astonishing ability to remain upbeat, often deflecting concern with his dry humor or immediately redirecting conversations back to the power play or the penalty kill. His devout Christian faith also served as a source of immense strength, helping him cope with the uncertainty of his prognosis. But even as his own health visibly declined through 2002, with significant weight loss and fatigue becoming impossible to hide, his focus shifted outward toward others. While enduring his own unimaginable pain, he began contributing his time and energy to a special legacy project. Refusing to be defined by his illness, he chose to define his final days by his selflessness, planning a pediatric palliative care hospice for term-ill children. When the Ottawa Senators hired Roger Nielsen as an assistant coach for the 2001 season, many in the league were puzzled. Why would a contending team bring in a coach who was not just battling one, but 2 forms of terminal cancer? To the Senators organization, led by General Manager Marshall Johnston, the answer was simple. They weren't just hiring an assistant, they were bringing in a sage. Having Roger on our staff, it was a privilege. He forgot more about hockey than most of us will ever know. Some days, he'd come in looking so frail you'd worry. But the moment he started talking about the game, breaking down a power play on the whiteboard, a different energy took over. His mind was always the sharpest in the room. He taught our players, he taught me, every single day. His role was unique. He was a mentor to the young stars, a confidant to the veterans, and a strategic sounding board for head coach Jacques Martin. He'd sit quietly in the video room, his old domain as Captain Video, his body weakened by chemotherapy, but his eyes still seeing the game in ways no one else could. He'd spot a tiny flaw in a defenseman's positioning, a subtle tell in an opponent's face-off stance. His notes were gold. He had this quiet way about him. He wouldn't yell. He'd just skate over to you in practice, put a hand on your shoulder, and ask a question. "Alfie, what did you see on that play?" He made you think. He made you a smarter player. But more than that, seeing the courage he showed every day just to be at the rink. It put everything in perspective. How could you complain about a bad practice when you saw what he was going through? He made us all better people. His fight was not without its moments of vulnerability. By 2002, his health had visibly declined. The weight loss and fatigue were more apparent. Yet, he rejected pity, maintaining a stoic demeanor. He was a teacher until the very end, and his final classroom was the Ottawa Senators' locker room. And it was there, in the spring of 2002, that the hockey world decided it was time to give the teacher one final, unforgettable lesson in love. In the spring of 2002, the Ottawa Senators offered a dying Roger Nielsen the chance to coach his 1,000th game. In a decision that defined his character, he respectfully declined, refusing to potentially tarnish the team's official record with a loss. Hearing this, opposing coach Pat Quinn, Nielsen's longtime friend and former student, proposed a remarkable gentleman's agreement. If the game was tied late in the third period, both teams would essentially stop playing, ensuring Nielsen would not have a loss on his record for his milestone game. On the day of the game, an unforgettable scene of respect unfolded. After nearly 3 periods of hard-fought hockey between the two fierce rivals, the unspoken agreement took hold with the score tied. In the final minutes, players from both teams simply passed the puck back and forth, letting the clock run down. The game ended in a tie, a moving tribute that transcended victory or defeat. As the final buzzer sounded, players from both the Senators and the Maple Leafs skated to the Ottawa bench and formed a line to warmly embrace him. In an arena with no winners or losers, there was only love and respect for a great mentor on his final journey. Shortly after, Nielsen received hockey's highest honor, induction into the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder, a rare tribute for a coach without a championship. Standing at the podium, though frail, his voice was strong as he delivered his final lesson, urging everyone to never, ever give up. Roger Nielsen's death on June 21, 2003, at the age of 69, marked the end of a remarkable life. But his story did not end there. The final passion project he had worked on during his illness came to fruition. Roger's House, a pediatric palliative care hospice for terminally ill children and their families, was established in his name. In the midst of his own painful battle with cancer, he had thought of the most vulnerable among us, children. He wanted them to spend their final moments not in a cold hospital bed, but in a warm and comfortable place like home. Roger's House, carrying on his spirit, continues to provide comfort and love to countless children and their families today. This became his greatest victory. In the end, he may not have lifted the Stanley Cup, but he left behind something far greater. He taught us that true leadership is not about ruling with authority, but about communicating with sincerity and respecting each individual. He demonstrated not how to win the game of hockey, but how to live the game of life, and how to leave it with dignity. We remember champions for their victories, but we remember legends for their character. Roger Nielsen never lifted the Stanley Cup. He lifted the hearts of everyone who knew him, and that legacy, far beyond the ice rink, continues to resonate deeply within us all.